Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Book Set Completionist. My name is Tom. We are at episode 14. Today I'll be reviewing a book set, although it doesn't look like it. That doesn't look like a set. It looks like one book. And I'm reviewing two books in the Narnia Chronicles. First, this is really a set. It is, in fact, a trilogy. And the fact that it's in one book means that it's an omnibus. This set is in the genre of fantasy. It is not as old. Like I'm reading Narnia, that's pretty old. This book set this book set was published in 1995, 97, and the year 2000. And it is considered, I think it's considered children's literature, if you can call, is that a thing? Children's literature. And it features an animal. There has been a movie based on this set, although I'm not sure if it was a movie on all three of these installations. And the titles of these three novels include items you can hold in your hand, like something circular and something sharp and something you can put your eye on. Okay. A polar bear. Need I say more? Okay, yes. Here we have this. It is Dark Materials is the name of the whole set. And this includes the Golden Compass, the Subtle Knife, and the Amber Spyglass. An omnibus, pretty large. I don't know whose Dark Materials this is referring to, but I'm sure after reading it that becomes clear. I don't have to bring this to the table. You can see this is all there is. There is no map. Oh no, there's no map. And this does go against my inclinations to collect sets in a series. However, sometimes life throws you something convenient and you can just roll with it. I'm not gonna bother with getting individual books. This omnibus will do just fine. There you go. Okay, the first review of today's video is of this book, The Silver Chair by C.S. Lewis, Part 4 in the Narnia Chronicles. In this book, we see a character from a previous book. His name is Eustace. He has found a friend. Her name is Jill. They are at a school in the real world and they are being chased by bullies. And as they run away from them, they ask for, well, the gate to Narnia to be opened because they really want to get away from their enemies. Now, that happens, of course. Jill and Eustace, they end up in Narnia again, but not before getting some instructions from who else? Who other than, what's his name? Aslan. Yeah, Aslan has a mission for these two because, as we will also learn, there is a situation in Narnia. If you remember Caspian, the prince from the second book, he is now very old and he has a son of his own, and this son is missing. The son has been kidnapped by an evil witch. Okay, so what happens is that they team up with some other character, Puddleglum. He's well, an interesting character, and they have an adventure. They go into the northern part of the Narnia world, into this ruinous city of the giants. There's a fortress that is where the prince is supposed to be hidden. No, actually, it's not. Well, that's what they think. They think that the prince is in the fortress. Well, in fact, he's not. But in the fortress, there are giants. So you get some elements of classical storytelling. There's a mission, there is a journey, there will be some obstacles along the way, and then there will be a final confrontation with the evil witch, like in the first book. Um, it's a bit disappointing how that all resolves, but I won't spoil it. I think if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. The problem, again, to me, if you've seen my previous video, is Aslan. Aslan is this sort of Jesus slash God figure, and he has a lot of power, but he chooses to be quite selective with his power and just lets people do things that he could very easily do himself if that was really necessary. Like, these kids need to go and save a prince. But why doesn't Aslan do it himself if he is this very powerful character? I know, because you wouldn't have a story if that's the case. If Aslan did everything himself, okay, you get it? There wouldn't be a story. But then why is there an Aslan character at all? If you add, as an author, if you add this divine godlike character in your stories, then whatever happens is just because that character wants it to happen, not because it has to happen. These kids don't have to save the prince because Aslan could do it, but Aslan doesn't want to do it. He wants to make the kids do it. And okay, that might have a purpose. I don't know which purpose that is, other than developing these kids as characters and personalities, because they'll go through hardship and challenge and struggle, and that might shape them as people. But you also risk them, there's a risk that they die in the worst case, right? Now, it's a children's story. It won't happen. They don't die. But like, Aslan is supposed to be a reference to Jesus or God, right? And in the Bible, also, God makes things happen or chooses not to make things happen, while in fact he could, if we believe that God is all powerful. And if he doesn't do the things that people want him to do, that even might seem very, very urgent and pressing, but God doesn't want to do that. He says, no, you go and do it yourself. Well, then, if these people fail, or if there's a high risk of injury or death even, then what does it tell you about the God character? If he just allows people to be in dangerous situations when they don't have to be, see, that's the issue in storytelling. Your plot will suffer from this kind of flaw, that your God character could do everything but chooses not to. It's better not to have a God character in your novels, isn't it? So, anyway, I think that is a bit of a distraction. If you, like me, I'm not a Christian. I don't have that background. I haven't read the Bible. I've known things about the Bible, but I don't have any sort of warm feeling towards Christian mythology or religious or theological mythology, theological allegory. It just doesn't hit to me. It makes me very skeptical and annoyed. Right, so that's the silver chair. By the way, why is it called a silver chair? The silver chair really only shows up on exactly one page of the story, when they find Prince Brilliant, that's his name, and he has to strap himself into this chair so that he doesn't do anything crazy while he undergoes this sort of transformation. Brilliant is like a sort of werewolf, kind of. He has an affliction that changes him every once in a while into a crazy beast or something like this. And if he's in the chair, he cannot go anywhere. And so the kids, they free him from this position, and then immediately Brilliant takes his sword and hacks the chair into smithereens. Yeah, so why do you call your story the silver chair if it has no impact on the story whatsoever? It's just a prop. Anyway, next is the horse and his boy. His boy, not its boy, right? We consider horses as noble creatures. Maybe we should use a personal pronoun for no, that's not a pronoun, that's possessive determiner. Fine. This book goes into a slightly different direction. There are no characters from previous parts in the series. We are introduced to two new characters, again, a boy and a girl. The boy is called Shasta, Jesus. Shasta. Don't make me say that. Shasta is an adopted boy. He lives in a place called Colorman, and that's south of Narnia, by the way, if you are familiar with the map of Narnia. And he has a miserable life. He is apparently adopted by a fisherman in Colorman, and he has to work very hard, and his stepfather is not very kind. And one day, this stepfather gets a visit from a nobleman, and this nobleman offers to buy this boy, Shasta. This nobleman comes on a horse, and what do you know? The horse can speak, because the horse is actually also from Narnia. Also, yeah, the boy looks fair-haired, blue-eyed, not like the people who live in Colorman, because those are all dark-skinned with beards and turbans, and it's hot there too, so you would clearly see that the boy doesn't really belong in that land. Okay, so anyway, the boy and the horse, they strike up a conversation, and they decide to make a run for it together. Okay, and so they go on that adventure. They want to go into Narnia. They want to go back home. Or they want to go to Narnia because they think Narnia is better than Colorman. We also learn about the female character, the girl. Her name is Aravis, and she's the daughter of a nobleman, and she has to marry some ugly guy in an arranged marriage because, well, there's this thing about Colorman. It's pretty much a representation of Indian or Middle Eastern culture that is put into a fantastical background. But the references to it are very obvious that it's not really fictional at all. The culture of Colorman really is almost similar to real world, Indian or Arab culture, with all the food, with the clothing, with the city building, the architecture. It's all very much like Arabian Nights. If you've read that, you'll recognize some of the same settings. And Lewis is not particularly positive in his descriptions of that place. And he is always very positive about Narnia. And this creates a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. I described it earlier as a latent xenophobia because, again, he's very, very negative about the descriptions and the personalities of the people in Colorman. And yeah, that just becomes very obvious and a little bit troubling after a while. Also adding to the fact that all the main characters want to get away from this place because it's so terrible. And yeah, again, if you can recognize Colorman as a sort of fill-in or substitute for real-world culture, a certain real-world culture, then yeah, you'll see that it's a bit problematic. But that's not even the worst. Again, it's Aslan, because who else could ruin the story than Aslan? So to add a bit of suspense to the story, there is a prince called Rabashan something. I'm sorry. Rabadash. And this Rabadash guy wants to marry Susan. We know Susan from the first two books. And Susan is now the queen of Narnia, and she's visiting this Colorman country as a guest. But because there might be a marriage in the works between Susan and Rabadash, but Susan discovers that Rabadash is a creep, and she doesn't want to marry him. So they escape. Susan escapes, and the other two kids also escape. This Rabadash guy is quite angry, and he vows to take his revenge on Narnia and wants to invade Narnia through another country in between called Archenland. They want to take the castle of Archenland so they can then set their attacks on Narnia itself. Aravis learns of this plan and warns Shasta and the horse, and so they decide that they have to be very quick about it and go into Narnia as quickly as possible, or at least go to Archenland and warn the king there about the imminent attack. Okay, I talked about Aslan. Like Aslan again, he shows up in the story and intervening in the actions of the characters. He pushes certain people in a certain direction. He acts as if he's a real lion. The kids don't know Aslan there. Aslan is a sort of mythical creature, and they've never met him. They don't really know his status. So when they see a lion, they don't know it's him. Aslan doesn't act as if he's the real Aslan. He just acts as a lion, so he can sort of spur on these kids. So yeah, he's just pushing them in a certain direction, the right direction. So eventually, there's a showdown. Rabbit reaches Archenland. There is a clash. There's a battle, and that all is pretty standard. So if it was just that, it would have been fine. If it was just a basic story, then you can enjoy that. It's not very good. The problem is with Aslan. Once again, Aslan can help. Aslan can choose not to help. Aslan has these godlike powers that he can put himself in any place and decide the events of whatever's going on. The story of Shasta, how he ended up in Colorman, is an interesting one. There was a conflict at sea. There was a battle between ships. Somehow Shasta ended up in the water and was about to drown, but he managed. He was still a baby by then, at that time. The little boat in which Shasta was floating was, well, it was about to float into open sea and surely would have meant the death of poor little boy, but not for Aslan. Aslan claims that he pushed this little boat into the fisherman's beach, and that's where this fisherman found him and decided to adopt him and raise him. And Aslan is expecting praise for that. Like say he said, "Oh, I did it. I was the one responsible for saving your life." Okay, but then as a reader, I wonder, why did Aslan not just simply float or push the boat back to the shore where his relatives were, or back to the ship where he could be found? Why put this boy into the hands of a man who doesn't love him, in a country that he doesn't know, where he's being treated quite badly? So why would you save somebody like that if you have, as a godlike character again, if you have the option to do anything else that's much better? Because then you wouldn't have a story. Okay, see, I understand that decision, but what about not putting a god character in your novel? What about just not saying that Aslan was responsible for saving Shasta? Why not just let that all out? Let the boy grow up in that place, right? Not as some sort of act of God, but just by chance. Yeah. So then there's also no need to praise anybody, and then no need for me to say, "Hey, wait a second, why would you get praise for such a half-hearted way of saving somebody? Why not just really save them and bring them back to their real family?" Okay. Another very disturbing thing that I saw in this book was the fact that when these two kids were on their way to Archenland, they were in the desert, they were being chased by a lion. And they thought that was an actual lion that wanted to eat them, but it wasn't. It was Aslan. And Aslan, at some point, came very near to the girl and, in fact, scratched the girl's back, or should I say, lacerated, because she was severely injured after that. And she didn't know that Aslan was that lion. And she just thought, "Oh, I've been scratched by a real lion. Oh, poor me." And she recovered eventually, but it did cause some severe pain to her. And then later it was revealed by Aslan himself. He admitted that he did that. He talked to Aravis and said, I did that to you. And what he explains why. Because when Aravis ran away, she had to escape from her house, so there were people watching her. She drugged one of the servants that was watching her. She drugged a woman, and then she was able to get away from their supervision. And after her parents found out that she had run away, they punished this servant for failing to keep an eye on Aravis, and they whipped or lashed that servant girl, which caused that girl immense pain. And so Aslan says directly that he hurt Aravis because she caused the pain of somebody else. And to me, that is really sick. I mean, if Aslan was a terrible character, an evil character, fine, you could accept that it is his role to be bad and evil. But Aslan is supposed to be the good guy, right? And now he's saying that you deserve bodily corporal punishment if you somehow indirectly cause that to somebody else. It's like eye for an eye, right? This sort of revenge morality that I don't think many people agree with. I don't. So what would have happened if Aravis's family decided to kill that slave or the servant girl? What would have happened to Aravis then? What would Aslan have done if Aravis had been responsible for the death of somebody else? Then what? Would Aslan kill Aravis? I mean, by that logic, he should have. But see, this is, if you use this sort of justification for physical violence, then where does it stop? How far does it go? And I don't agree with that. And I think it's terrible for this to be in a children's book. If you hurt somebody, then it's their right, or for someone else to hurt you back. So don't hurt anybody. Is that the message, right? You don't want people to hurt anybody, but if it's fear of retribution that makes people not do terrible acts, I don't think that's a real good motivation for not doing those bad acts. So I would not read this to my kids if I had any. I don't, but it's shocking to see that that's in the book. So be careful here. That's in the book. Overall, look, there are some nice elements in it. I think the whole Calorman descriptions are okay, but not if it means that Lewis is equating them with real world culture, which then causes people to think negatively of that culture. Yeah. So yeah, fine. It's not good. Don't read this. I think overall the whole Narnia set is going to be a big disappointment. I'm reading them all, but I think at the end I will tell people not to do that. Don't do that. Don't read it. Well, okay, who knows? Maybe the last two books will turn everything around, and they may redeem themselves. I don't expect so, but there it is. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day, and see you in the next episode. Bye.